the definition of a blockbuster, James Harden and to Philadelphia for Ben Simmons and a bunch of ancillary pieces. This has dominated our professional lives for the last few days, for sure.
I would amend that to the past several months, at least for some of us.
Yeah, for you, for sure. Yeah. But these last few days, for those of us in this profession, I mean, we work all the time, nonstop on working with sources, but these 6-7 days leading to the trade deadline is borderline insane. The amount of communication and talks that go on, and like 98% of it is useless. And I've talked about this before, but whatever, that doesn't matter. What matters is they got this deal done a couple hours before the deadline. And Bontemps, you've covered this entire year. We've talked about it a lot on here. In my view, once the Nets came to terms with the reality that James Harden didn't want to be there and what that means. A lot of guys don't want to be places. But what it means when James Harden doesn't want to be where you with your team, once they came to terms with that reality, it was all about negotiating the exit. And James Harden essentially defecated on the floor last week. And forced this to happen. And so,
maybe his hamstring tightened up when he was squatting.
And so Bontemps, first off, let me just ask you, what do you think about the deal itself? Phil, go over, if you wouldn't mind, what you wrote all about today, and
sure,
and what you think about just the deal itself.
So the Sixers are getting James Harden and Paul Millsap from the Sixers, or from the Nets, and the Nets are getting Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, 2 first-round picks, one this year, next year, one very far in the future.
It's either they can choose to take the pick this year, or they can defer it to next year.
Right. They can have this year's pick or next year's pick, and then they can have one in, I think, either 2027 or 28. Look, I think the other Tim had to deal with this last year in Houston, right? When James Harden decides he is done with something, it's pretty clear he's done. And
he's an elite quitter.
And you could see over the last week, this situation was obviously in a rough place. And, I think logically, this makes sense for everybody, right? The Sixers get James Harden, the guy Daryl Morey has obviously wanted for a long time, had a lot of success with in Houston. Could be a very interesting combination with Joel Embiid here in Philadelphia. I'll get to that part in a second. And the Nets get Ben Simmons, who I think can be a really good fit with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, is a lot cheaper, is locked up for a long time. They get Seth Curry, who I think can fit with them too. Ironically, we joked a lot last year about Andre Drummond with the Lakers. I actually think Andre Drummond can help the Nets some. Like, I do actually think as a big body who could give them some rebounding. I'm not saying it's a huge deal, but like they had literally no size.
Some nights he can really help you, and other nights he can't. But I mean, on some nights he can really help you.
He's at least look, if they're playing, say, Philly in a playoff series, they had literally nobody to guard Joel Embiid. I'm not saying Andre Drummond's going to slow down Embiid. He's not. But at least they have a body to throw at him who can get some rebounds down. So
I think your point is that's not a throw in. Like, that was actually,
I can understand why the Nets were like, right. I can understand why the Nets were like, hey, if we're going to do this trade, we'd like to get Drummond. Now, obviously, the big thing here is how is James Harden going to fit with Joel Embiid in Philly? I've talked a lot.
And how long?
How long? Right. So our Bobby Marks has reported he's going to opt into his contract, which is not a surprise. He gets the most money if he opts in and then signs a long-term extension with Philly. I'm sure he will do that. He will be being paid $60 million when he's 38 years old. That's not going to work, right? That's going to be bad. You can say that now. It's fine. If Philly wins a championship in the next 1 to 3 years with Joel Embiid and James Harden, it will be great. All the money will be worth it, right? Like, as you say all the time, Brian, if you win a championship, you never have to say you're sorry. Banners hang forever. Flags fly forever. If they win the championship, this will all be great.
You don't have to say you're sorry unless you trade for Russell Westbrook and the Lakers are still apologizing. They just won a couple years ago, but that's neither here nor there. Let's keep focused,
but
guys.
Yes, we have to keep focused. We always keep focused on this pod. That though is a very, very high bar to reach. And look, Zach wrote a whole thing about James Harden in the playoffs last year. You and I, Tim, were in Houston in 2017 for Game 6 against the San Antonio Spurs. I remember I was sitting with Kurt Goldsberry, who was then working for the Spurs before that game, 10 minutes before it started. Kawhi Leonard wasn't going to play. All the Spurs guys were furious. They're going to have to go back to San Antonio for Game 7. Like, man, we had a chance to win this series. Now we're going to lose. I think the score at the end of the first quarter of that game was 9,000-10. And
I'd have to look it up. I believe Harden had more or as many turnovers as points, or it was really close in that game.
It was a catastrophic loss. And that's just one of several black holes on his resume in the playoffs. So for everything else that's gone on with James Harden, this is ultimately a put up or shut up moment for James Harden. He got what he wanted. He gets to Philadelphia. He's with Joel Embiid. He's going to have the ball all the time. Like, this is all set up for him. Well, but you know what I mean? He's going to be the point guard. He's not sharing point guard duties to anybody. Right? Tyrese Maxey's not going to be taking the ball from him. James Harden got what he wanted. He's got his co-star. He's here in Philly. He's going to have all his money. He's with Daryl Morey. All of it's set. So, like, this is it. If it does not work here, if they don't win big here, like, that's it. There's not going to be other chances. So, you know, look, we can talk all day about how bad the contract's going to be down the road. It's not going to be good. But this is on James Harden to make this work, because after everything else that's happened, this is the last chance saloon. And, you know, it's got to work, or else it's going to really be a long-term stain on his resume with the way these past couple situations have gone.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.